All right, the time is now 5 p.m. At this time, I will be calling the work session for Tipp City Schools to start. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Stevens, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Drum.
Here.
Mrs. McMurray is absent this evening. Mr. Maines.
Here.
Mrs. Dillard.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. We do have a quorum and can continue this meeting.
All right, sounds good. At this time, I would love a motion for the approval of the agenda.
All motion.
Moved by Mr. Thompson. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Dillard. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote.
Thompson.
Yes.
Dillard.
Yes.
McMurray.
Absent.
Absent. Wrong. Maines.
Here.
Dillard.
Yes.
I think that was everybody.
Drum says yes. Motion passes. All right, at this time, we'll start with our discussion items. Professional development leader presentations.
So with this, we have a representation from each building, and who drew the short straw? Or who wants to go first?
We'll go.
You go first.
Broadway will go first.
Yay! So I'm Carrie Hay. I'm here for Tina Smith, who is not able to be here, with also our wonderful PDL leaders.
Why don't you come up here?
Can you come to the podium?
Now I want to go last. Thanks, since the podium, I'm just an extra. I'm Carrie Hay. I'm here because Mrs. Smith is out with our wonderful PDL leaders, Melissa Pockenberger, kindergarten teacher, and Amy Blake, first grade teacher. So we're going to share just a little bit about how Broadway used the knowledge that the team gained from the PDL experience and shared it with the wider staff and the growth that we saw as a result of that. So we started the year at the beginning of the year with a activity at a staff meeting for our staff to increase their knowledge about the Danielson engagement rubric, which was the core of a lot of their work at PDL. So from there, we allowed our staff to have conversation and collaborate in their team meetings as well as TBT to talk about what kind of things we wanted to see kids experiencing in classrooms to increase that engagement and that cognitive lift, to see them doing more of the thinking and hands-on learning. So we created an opportunity for every staff member at Broadway to do a walkthrough with that Danielson engagement rubric, so they could go into another teacher's classroom, see what was happening, and use that rubric to self-reflect on their room and see what areas they could increase engagement. We knowledge to practice at our January Professional Development Day, where we ran the staff through a variety of hands-on.
And I think that helped us. So we have new curriculum. So our ELA was new with Wit and Wisdom this year. And then kindergarten and first grade kind of dabbled in the bridges for the math this year. So that'll be full on next year. So with those rubrics, we were able to, look at, with those two new curriculums, the student engagement, and with the rubric, how that all matches up with what they're doing in both curriculums. And then our BLTs, our building level teams, we do meet once a month. And so what we're talking about at our monthly meetings, we take back to them to talk about student engagement as well as data as a group.
Yeah. And we also then, at the end of the year, we allowed the teachers to then choose an area, specifically in Wit and Wisdom, to observe and focus that they felt, based on the earlier reflections, that they needed maybe a little bit more strength in, or to see someone else doing it to gain that confidence. So they were able to choose which area, and then they got to go with another colleague and watch in their another person's classroom to see that happening, and maybe how they can make the same strategies, connections in their own classroom with the student engagement. So.
And overall, the team felt like the conversation level among staff focused on engagement increased dramatically. Therefore, student engagement was increasing dramatically because we were really focusing on that and the different ways to achieve that in a K-1-2 classroom. And the number of times that staff members were able to enter other staff members' classroom in a collaborative situation was really something that our staff enjoyed and felt like they learned a lot from. So we felt those were the two big successes from this. Questions for Bravo?
So I'm just curious, from the teachers that have been at Broadway or at Nevin, is this the first time you've ever done walkthroughs in other teachers' rooms?
No,
Not the
just
first
in a
time,
different,
yeah, not
in
the
a
first
different
time we've
way.
done walkthroughs, but much more
Specifically
targeted.
looking at the target of student engagement with that Danielson rubric. So just something more specific in one direction. And we've all done that. I know for sure that Tina did the walkthroughs based on what you wanted to see before, but it was much more informal, not like a rubric to follow, but just kind of a walk around and check it out. And I know I've done it as like a mentor. We used to have like a 2-year mentor program way back when, and you would go visit other classrooms, and being a mentor for first-year teachers, we'd go visit classrooms. So I know I've done a lot of that with other staff.
And I would say that, I don't know, like the way people feel now, it's just more comfortable. It's just kind of, yeah. And there's just more opportunity for it now.
There was
And
definite
common
growth
language.
through the year because we came as 2 buildings into one. So I think, and we were all doing new curriculum. So at first, people were a little skittish, like, why are you coming in my room? And then when they, realized after a while, doing it and everyone's doing it, that it wasn't as high stakes as maybe they thought in the beginning. Like maybe they thought they were being judged because we're all coming together. And by the end, I think it was much more open and people were excited about seeing other people doing the things. So.
The common language of the rubric and the strategies has been really good for the team too, to continue to grow.
It sounds like it really built a culture of collaboration as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did the kids like it?
Oh, the kids love when
I mean,
grown-ups
yeah.
are in their room at that age.
It's like a new show, someone else to perform.
Yeah, the kids love walkthrough. I do think absolutely our kids
Well, even
hold
the
on to
staff,
engagement. The more active the classroom is, the
Yeah.
more they're excited. So yes, we've seen an increase in that as well.
and through that, the first walkthroughs, when it was the student engagement and it wasn't specifically on Wit and Wisdom, I know first and kindergarten were excited about seeing the bridges.
Got some other side benefits.
And so then we wanted to incorporate it in our classroom this year, which we thankfully were allowed to do, thanks to all of you.
Yep.
That was led by this PDL, so.
So I just have one more little question. So was it strictly grade level? So first grade teachers going to other first grader? Did
No.
they go up
No,
grades
we
too?
purposely went up and down and across as well. So our related arts staff was involved, our intervention staff was involved. Some of our gen ed teachers went to intervention classrooms and looked at their engagement in those settings as well. So we were purposeful in not sticking in our own grade level because we often know a lot about what our other grade level team members are doing and not so much about what other classrooms are doing.
And to piggyback off that, I think we would like to see, in the future, especially with the new building, it'll be a lot easier, but to go see even other levels, not just that are in our building.
Do you guys feel overall, because I used something similar when I was teaching in Dayton, do you feel like overall it helped you to realize maybe some of the things that, or maybe people commented about some of the things that they maybe forgot as they've been teaching for a while, or things that they weren't necessarily like focusing on that changed something they were doing?
Absolutely. We saw several instances where people tried things that were new to them. There was also lots of instances of affirmation. Oh, someone else is doing that and it works for them. I thought it was working for me, which was good as well to see.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys. Ooh, do you have papers for us? I have papers. Appreciate it.
Great, so I'm Jessica Miano. I'm a 4th grade teacher here at LT.
I'm Mike Vegas, principal of people.
That one. So we had the same goal and vision as Broadway did. So our focus was on student engagement and opportunities for kids. So to piggyback off of what they said, we also used the Danielson framework rubric, and our whole staff participated in learning walks. Teachers used a Google Doc, and we chose a learning strategy or a teaching strategy that maybe other people would want to see, and we would put it in there and people could sign up and choose, like, oh, I would really like to see someone use this teaching strategy, and then they would fill it in and come in at a particular time and watch us use that teaching strategy. And so it was the same as theirs. People, 4th grade teachers went into 5th and so on, or, language arts went into math, and, because some things can be, overlap between those two. So we did that, and we noticed that we saw a lot more interactive strategies, student-led discussions happening, hands-on activities, which was great to see. We also had teacher-run professional development. So several different staff members ran various professional developments, and some of them were instructional grouping strategies, which there's the slides that went with that in there. Just giving teachers different opportunities and examples of ways they could group in students when they're doing particular lessons. The learning continuum of engagement, which we created a poster that we're going to have printed over the summer that every class is going to have, or most classes are going to have, so we could have that common language of what it means for students to be engaged, so that the students can reflect on themselves and think, okay, you can see in there's different levels. There's like a driver, there's, oh my gosh. Distractor, yes. So it'll be good for us to use that same language throughout all the grade levels, and students can after a lesson reflect, okay, was I a driver? Was I disengaged? Was I distracting other people? And it really helps them make themselves be more into the lesson. We also had a PD on Canva, which is an interactive a platform presentation, that you can create slides, interactive lessons, presentations. And so we did that, and so a lot of teachers use that time to create slides and presentations for next year with Wisdom and Bridges. And then also we were focusing on student agency and self-efficacy, and we have goal setting for students and reflective. If you look on the last paper, some of us use this for students to set goals for their MAP scores or for anything, state test scores, things like that, and come up with an action plan to meet those goals. And then after each beginning, middle, end of the year, reflect and say, what could I do differently to reach my goals and make a new goal for the next quarter. And last, we have been really focused on our TDTs, so teachers meet several times a month. It depends on the grade level, and we can set those up whenever, but our focus is on looking at data and how we can create more engaging lessons and get students involved in their learning and take ownership of what they are learning. And those have been really effective with getting all the teachers in the grade level on board and having a common goal for their lessons. And then that's basically what we've been working on this year. We hope to continue it next year too.
Questions can we answer for you? Correct?
Your second and third page has these 5 different grouping systems. Was there one particular that stood out that you faced or felt was better than the others?
I think in general, just mixing it up and giving kids variety, so we have flexible learning situations and changing it up so it's not the same thing all the time. It's not all the maybe the most skilled students or most highest achieving kids together, and not always the opposite. Or sometimes it's interest based where they do things that they really like. So I think mixing it up is best and not sticking in the same lane all the time.
And depending on what lesson or activity, you may want to use a different style of grouping. You don't always want to just random pull sticks. Sometimes you want to be more specific about and mindful about how you want to group your students. So it's just giving them, a lot of them, they hadn't heard of them before. So it was nice to give them choices that, I could
group them that way and see how that works. So.
Once you grouped them, were you able to try different groupings for the same students then?
Yeah, some teachers did that. Yeah. It just depends on how they wanted to do it. In my classroom, I had one set grouping that I would keep for like a week and let those same students, it was up on I printed it out and it was on the whiteboard, and they would always go to that same group just for that week, but then the next week I'd switch it up, and just so, yeah, they could get a variety of students to interact with. Yes. Sorry.
Well, I think it's great. You're developing teacher leaders with, leading the professional development and all of these types of activities, especially with students self-monitoring themselves. It provides not just teacher to student feedback, but feedback from the student to the teacher about, if kids are checking themselves, it tells a lot to a teacher. If the kid is always saying withdrawing, then that tells the teacher a lot about what's going on with them. So super excited for you. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, that's really the highest level of engagement too, just getting the kids to take. We did have some things on motivation too, that we had some PD on, so the intrinsic, versus extrinsic motivation. So obviously the more intrinsic we can make it, the more they're driving what they learn. As opposed to us always putting carrots out in front of them with candy and treats, stuff like that.
And I think teaching those is important too, because some of the kids might not know what I'm doing is disrupting. They might not even be aware that this, whatever, tapping the pencil or whatever they're doing is disrupting. So teaching that so they can be more mindful when they're, like you could say, are you being disrupting right now, or are you, I think that's good for the kids to be aware of that.
The flexible grouping also allows for the kids, what adult wants to be in the same group every single time, all year long, right? So I think that really increases the chances of higher levels of engagement. So.
Yeah, I agree. And the interest one is fun too. They like that because you won't tell them that they'll be in the group ahead of time, but you let them pick an interest, and then you're like, okay, everyone who chose this, you're now in a group, and that, that can mix it up too. And they might talk to someone that they maybe never talked to before that has the same interest in them that they wouldn't know ahead of time.
That also produces more engagement in the activity that you're producing for the kids too, which then, I don't know, did you guys feel like it opened up a lot more discussion within your classroom and a lot more creativity?
Yes, oh for sure, yeah. Things I didn't even know about the students, you find out all their little, interests and hobbies, and that you wouldn't normally find out in your regular teaching, so that's good.
And then I just have a question.
Yeah.
Because I think that this is amazing. You guys were going into each other's classrooms and teaching things and showing that. That is super duper uncomfortable. So kudos to you guys for doing that. Because it is not fun to have someone come in and critique everything that you're doing about your job. So kudos to you guys for stepping up and doing that. That's huge. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
It's okay. We appreciate that too. Thank you. I love paper, so I can read something.
I'm also happy to report that the 8th grade made it all the way to DC this year.
Yay!
Improvement every year.
So he passed out a survey we gave to staff. I'm Kevin Kanatke. I'm a middle school math teacher. And then Bridget Hughes is an English teacher over at the middle school. And we were both a part of the PDL. And what we gained from that, we met once a week, 2 as a district and then 2 building specific. And then one was really just with Bridget, Austin, Mr. Gherkin, Mr. Moran, and I. And then the other one was including the department heads. And we met with those. We had once a week. We also implemented the rubric that they were talking about and had learning walks done throughout the year. We asked teachers to do them twice a quarter. And it was really all about teachers kind of leading teachers and teachers being comfortable. And that's super hard. What you talked about before is going into someone else's room and being like, okay, I want to learn about this because I don't think I'm doing a great job at engagement, or I don't think I'm doing a great job at classroom management. Who's a teacher in this building that does a great job? And we went and found that person. And I think that's where real growth happens in the building, is like some of the best PD you can find right there in the building. So that was really fun. Also led a lot of PD that was focused on engagement and learning strategies. And again, that builds on that teacher leadership. It also strengthens community and collaboration amongst the staff. And it just creates this openness and trust atmosphere. Because when the teachers are up there leading the professional development, other teachers that are in that, they feel as though like, okay, these are teachers that are doing the same thing that I'm doing every single day. These are practical tips that could work in my classroom. So that was really good and something that me and Bridget really enjoyed doing. It also was nice as a PD to just have our voices be heard for discussion, whether it be even engagement in the classroom or discussion about the new buildings, all that kind of stuff. It was just nice to have that sense of ownership and like, hey, my voice can really be heard and we can change some things in this district to make it better. It also increased, I feel like, student morale, staff morale, and we also had some good collaboration with department heads to align our goals, make sure we kind of are thinking the same thing, and maximizing kind of the relevance in what we're talking about. We also engaged in active and ongoing conversation. When we're meeting weekly, we're talking about similar things. And that was just super nice to make sure that we are promoting an atmosphere in this district and this building that we want to use to push this district forward.
Yeah, from an administrative perspective, we had to go a little slow to go fast because of the discomfort in it, right? It feels evaluative by nature. We even said, hey, because it does seem that way, we even gave them a quarter of the year. We said, don't report anything to me. Just go do them. I don't have to hear a thing about it. And then we'll start recording things on the second quarter. And that allowed them to actually experience it a little bit and feel more comfortable with it. And from that perspective, at the beginning of the year, all the way to the end was a huge change. It is nice to know that our staff recognizes that professional development doesn't have to be outside of our building. We have great teachers in our building, and you can see other people do this at any point. And now they don't even really ask for suggestions anymore because they've been in other people's classes enough. Before it could be, who does differentiation well? And I could say, well, go see Molly's, electronic lab about wiring. Or, who builds relationships with kids. You can go to Galloway. I knew who to go and kind of point them to. But now they know it themselves, which is really nice because they can have more conversations in a day than I could individually. And so more discussion, it does come to light. One of my favorite things we did was we had our PDL people do professional development with our staff and work through a few learning strategies. And we just wanted to pick a topic that, might go well. And we had Kevin leading a conversation about staff cell phone policies. And they were sitting there and they were saying, it was a kind of an energetic conversation. And we had to, even at the end, kind of pause and be like, what was the purpose, right? Like, it was to show you that this learning strategy gets you thinking and actively, conversing with your peers. And, they were so caught up in the content that pausing and showing them the value of the learning strategy was great because that's what we want for kids, right? We want them to be so caught up in the content. They're not focused on necessarily the process, but they're learning and engaging and dialoguing to that extent. And so that really stuck out. There's also been some curricular benefits to this. If I know one of our English teachers visited a social studies class, and she was like, I never really looked at their curriculum, and they're studying all these ancient civilizations, and we could do this supplemental text with them on this, and this fits nicely into what they're doing. And so it's been really nice to see that as well, because as we work to increase ownership in the building and leadership in the building, being able to see our teachers professionally collaborate with one another in meaningful ways that doesn't always have to be prompted because they're just naturally doing it, I think has led our building to see some improvement. I do think we're moving in the right direction, and the more this continues and the more we allow our teachers to engage with one another and make it a focal point, I think would be a highlight. And then on the district level, what I'll say, seeing everybody work that, twice a month at a district level was really encouraging too, because I got to see how other buildings do things. And we even got to, steal from, Mrs. Weaver will talk here in a bit, but we stole one of their slideshows with all the learning strategies on it. And she even led a professional development with the PDL team about professionalism and what that looks like and what are the tenets of that. And just seeing another administrator do that and seeing the staff engage in that way was actually very beneficial, not just for our kids and our teachers, but also for me as an administrator. I'm learning continually as well, and doing these activities and these, vertical alignments has been beneficial for me. So, questions?
I'll just say, I think, as it pertains to everybody who's made these presentations, it seems like one of the primary benefits to this is the fact that it breaks down silos and it creates like one large silo that everybody's working in together. And I'd have to imagine, and you guys can speak to this, that culturally you've probably seen a huge upgrade in terms of people who might normally never talk to each other, interact with each other, are now like, maybe they strike up a friendship, or maybe there is some coordination that's going on between their classes when they have subjects that aren't related to each other, or whatever. It just seems like a really, like a big cultural upgrade to do these types of things. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and it seems like we're getting to the point where people are sending out, building emails about, hey, I'm doing this activity 5th period. If anyone wants to stop by and check it out and give me feedback, that'd be great. Greatly appreciated. And that would have never happened last year or years before that. Even in the fall, it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? But we've made a really large jump in just getting teachers comfortable with having other people come in and give them some feedback.
And giving feedback.
Yeah.
We did 2 or 3 surveys, and I just threw them into ChatGPT. What I gave you was the computer's summary of that findings. And you'll see that actually the one thing they want most of is more time for reflection and more time to sit and process whether or not things were successful or not. So it's inviting feedback from other peers, and it's also encouraging discussions where they can offer it to their peers as well. But teachers, I think, are seeing themselves less as a math teacher or an English teacher, or they're seeing each other more as a collective school-wide initiative to help offer our kids the best we can get.
That's huge, and I think one of the biggest values of that is for anybody who would join our team in the future, coming into a culture like that might be uncomfortable, because I think what we're doing is uncommon but valuable. But it's also going to raise the bar. You might pull something out of somebody that they didn't even know was there, but they jump on one of our teams, and it's an environment where they can flourish. So I just want to say bravo to everybody. I think it's fantastic what's going on here.
And especially the cross-curricular, I think that's so important. I know when I was an educator, like that's what we talked about all the time, teaching cross-curricular, but it's so hard if you're so focused on one specific lesson or one specific area of education to understand how yours can fit into something else.
Oh, yeah.
So providing these opportunities for not just the teachers, but for the students' growth is going to be huge long-term.
We have part of Wit and Wisdom, the English curriculum is sometimes they'll talk about famous artworks. And our teachers are like, well, that's just one thing that takes us some more time. We really want to kind of move forward. And our art teacher was like, I'll do that. Like, why would I not do that as like a bell ringer? I'll take your art discussion and incorporate it into my class, and then that's more time for you to move on to the next thing, but the kids still get it. And it's just like cool to see that now we're even running like what was originally designed as an English lesson as a bell opener for one of our art classes, and now they're making that connection as well.
Huge.
So.
Awesome.
So have you picked one of these, your recommendations for next year? Are you thinking about next year? Are you like focused on one more than the other?
We're kind of actually narrowing down on the student engagement strategies. We want to offer 2 or 3 and have them try that out multiple times, because you do find yourself kind of leaning towards one strategy or the other. Like, I'm a big 4 corners guy. I love getting them up and walking around, especially if it's an abstract photo, so that there's some thinking there. So we are going to limit that. This year we kind of like, here's like 1,000 of these, find which ones you want, and we've learned that maybe being a little more direct on that would be good. Classroom technology integration, we're going to continue with the AI development of our staff. That's not necessarily a learning strategy per se, but I do think that anything that can help them become more efficient and manage time better, right? Like any teacher will tell you, the one thing they want more of is time. And then the collaborative curriculum planning, yes, actually, I'm happy to report that next year all of our subjects will have common plan together. So now that conversation can take place during their plan period, and then when we have these 2-hour late arrivals, we now can be more intentional with instructional strategies where that was the focus for the first hour every time was, or the second hour, was that common planning, but now that's going to get done as many times as they want in the week. So we are trying to work on ways to foster curriculum planning.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so for the high school, so Katie Weaver, high school principal, and Elizabeth Page, one of our Spanish teachers that we have. So we tend to do things a little bit different. So one of the first things that I'm going to ask you to do without cheating by looking at the papers that we're giving you, just saying. So if you would all think about the word student engagement for me for just a second. And I want for you to come up with words that come to your mind of what that means. And go ahead and just start calling them out. What is student engagement?
So excited about the curriculum that you're presenting.
Intentional.
Okay. Intentional what?
Intentional learning with outcomes.
Okay.
Noise.
Okay.
It has to be useful to every day. It has to be pertinent.
Okay.
I would say attention, personal attention.
To, like individual students
Yeah.
kind of thing? Okay. So at the beginning of the year, we were given a task. Our district focus is student engagement. So I worked with Leah Levy specifically as the assistant principal for us to be able to really put that in the confines of what does that mean? How do we work through navigating the direction of where we're going to head? So she and I determined that we would be looking through the Danielson framework. So there's 22 different rubrics that come with Danielson. It is the thing that OTES is based off of. So you're welcome to check this out sometime. I have lots of books in my office if you ever want to check them out. So that was the initial framework. So we've provided for you one of the rubrics that is specifically about student engagement. And this is the rubric that was the catalyst for everything of what we were doing. So before we get to a little bit more explanation, we have provided you an anticipation guide. So the very first page that you have are a set of 5 questions or 5 statements. We would like for you on your own to decide if they are true or false. We'll give you just a minute or two.
So super quickly, I'm going to talk through the latter 3 that are on there. One of the super important things about the professional development that we're doing, as everybody else has kind of talked about here, is those learning walks and instructional rounds. And so that statement, did you guys say true or false for that statement? True, yes. So learning walks and instructional rounds are an integral part of teacher professional development. That is, yes, true. The article, we're going to provide you guys with some of the research to support these statements and those sorts of things. But one of the articles that supports that really focuses on the idea of we instead of just me. And I think everybody here has kind of talked about tonight the idea of teacher collaboration. And that was one of the things that was really focused on towards the beginning of our PDL work this year. I've kind of had an interesting start to, or part of this team just as I joined on in January, not at the beginning of the year. And I would say trying to really emphasize the idea of we and collaborating and getting those ideas from our teachers and peers was one of the really important parts of PDL. So having that opportunity to do that and do this work is really integral to our work as teachers. On average, we've spent somewhere between 2 to 5 hours per week preparing for the professional development that our staff receives. True or false? True, yes. So as a PDL team, this is specific to the high school, but I'm sure that the other buildings can say the exact same thing. The middle school kind of mentioned the different meetings that we've been having. Specifically on our 2-hour delayed starts, we've had time to work through those and have time with our teachers in order to provide them with some specific instructions to the student engagement rubric. So it's been a really good time where we've been able to plan and take that time to provide it to our teachers. And then the last one, now that we have begun to focus on student engagement, we are able to move on to a new focus next year. True or false?
False.
False. So as Mrs. Weaver mentioned, the district's focus, yes, the district focus is student engagement, and so we're always going to be working towards that goal of student engagement. While there might be different facets in which we explore that and how we do that throughout the year, that's always going to be the main goal of what we're doing as teachers and how we're collaborating as teachers and the work that we're doing in this professional development. And
Yeah,
then,
so for the first two, where it says there are 7 different aspects of quality professional development, well, that's kind of specific. It didn't say true or false too, right? So obviously that is true. So it needs to be content focused, incorporate active learning, supports collaboration, uses models and modeling, provides coaching and expert support, offers opportunities for feedback, and is sustained in duration. There was a really good article that I had shared with the group that talked about the word, my favorite word is relentless. Like it is a continued, you keep doing it, you do it all the time, you keep moving forward, because if you ever go back, I mean, it's just like having an athletic practice, right? If you take time off, then things are a little rusty when you get back to it. So without having those conversations, that's just not there for us. With the next one saying, studies have shown that it takes at least 14 hours of professional development to have an impact on student learning, though many say 49 hours is what could really improve it. Absolutely, that is completely true. It takes a minimum of that on a specific topic in order for us to be able to take steps forward and see an impact in a student's learning. So that is a huge number of hours that we really need to be focused on particular topics to be able to utilize them in our classrooms. It's not just about hearing it at one time, it's a hearing it, it's a discussing it, it's a trying it, reflecting on it, coming back, and perfecting it. Right? That's the whole concept of what professional development should really be about. Without having the time that is dedicated to what you have allowed for us to be able to do, there is no way that we would be able to otherwise have the time and do the presentations and have the discussions that are there. So with the papers that we gave you, we do have, like she said, like Elizabeth said, we do have the articles that we're going to link. I'll send to Mr. Moran for him to send out to you the actual links to them, but I just didn't want to give people the opportunity to cheat on your anticipation.
Are we going to be graded on
I
that?
know, I won't. That's the whole. That's the best part of an anticipation guide.
I got an 80. I'm a better
There you go. It's very good.
So I thought one was a trick question because really the only important thing for quality professional development is engagement.
Well, that's part of it. That's part of it. But there are a lot of pieces, and there's a lot of really good research. Rebecca Birch is going to be the one who's the researcher who does a lot with like the number of hours and what really comes from professional development and where you should look. So that we, like I said, we included the rubric for you so you could see the actual rubric that's used. We had spent time at the high school looking at this, almost like kind of training people with OTES. And so there were videos that we watched. We had everybody, we called it calibrating. So we had everybody calibrate, so they would watch the videos and we would talk through, like, really, where is that and where does that fall? Ultimately, what we wanted is for people to be able to come up with a unified language. What is engagement? What are the pieces that come from that? How does that matter? We started at the beginning of the year, and a lot of times people would say, fun. It's really fun. Well, what else is it? And so this at least gave us a really good structure to be able to navigate what are the pieces that we really look for. And so as we started going through our initial learning walks, we then were able to have a lot of the discussion of that calibration. Was that really engaging? Did they just complete it, or was there critical thinking that happened with it? We really want to be able to move in that critical thinking direction, and so that really mattered. I gave you these graphs. This is from the very initial data that we collected based on the rubric for us to determine areas from the rubric that we felt like we needed to initially hone in on the professional development. So every time we go through and we either did learning walks and collected the data, anytime we did professional development, we did surveys with the staff so that they would be able to give us feedback. So they would give us feedback, and that would help us navigate. Every time we met, we would go through the feedback, we'd go through the data, we'd talk about what changed, what feedback were we getting. By the end of the year, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I heard was time. And so for us, with the focus of time for them, and what I'm hoping that we understood from their feedback was not just time to do nothing, right? But it was time for planning with each other. Time to be able to sit down and say, we have all these pieces, and Mr. Hoffman's sitting right here, happens to be sitting right here, and he was a really good example.
We did a book study of a whole bunch of, it's the 50 strategies, and he's a great example of somebody who specifically incorporated quite a few of the strategies, and we talked about some of them and how did it go and what worked and what didn't work. And so now, does he have other colleagues this next year that they sit down and really hone in on these? How is it going? How do we plan units? How did the lessons then break up? Do we have essential questions that we have incorporated to this? How are we assessing them? There's a lot of pieces that go into all of those things. And so that's what I hear when I hear them say, the feedback is we need time together, right? To be able to now hone in, then go and see how does it matter, what's the impact.
Absolutely.
So we broke up most of our PD then after a little bit of getting acclimated with what the engagement was into instructional strategies and differentiated instruction. I took the strategies, Elizabeth took the differentiated instruction. You guys also did a book study.
Yes, so we, after seeing that those were kind of needs from the rubric and from the surveys that we were collecting, a lot of people thought that the engaging strategies would be a really good place to go just as they have those strategies in their toolbox. That's what one of the slideshows was that the middle school mentioned was that toolbox. And then we also did some differentiated instruction PD just to mostly help our staff understand that we really want to get these kids engaged with the material in the sense of where they are at. We want to meet them in that really nice zone of proximal development and tell them, you know, here's what we're learning here. I want to be right above or right there so that I can teach you at the level because we want to be sure that we're meeting them if they're higher learners at that high rate, and if we need to, you know, do other things in order to meet them where they're at, do that as well. So it was a really good place for our staff to be. They could choose what path they wanted to go down, and a lot of teachers at the end when we did our final survey, a lot of them had some improved strategies for both the strategies of engagement and differentiated instruction, which was really nice to see their thoughts kind of shift on that. So, questions for us?
What if that's wrong?
Sorry?
What if that's wrong?
That's the best part. It just lets us know where you are. And then you learn the answer. That's right. That's right. It's a good book. It's a good one.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming and explaining all of that information to us. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you for being willing to be vulnerable. It's amazing. So.
It's more fun to teach this way.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Okay. At this time, I would take a motion to adjourn the work session.
Move that we adjourn.
Moved by Mrs. Dillard,
Second.
second by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote.
Dillard,
Yes.
Thompson, Drum,
Yes.
Baines.
Yes.